In this video, we will show you how to replace your rear parking brake shoes on this Ford F-150. These will be located behind your rear brakes. Let's get into it. Let's prepare to remove our driver's side rear wheel. To do this, safely raise and support the rear of the vehicle so the wheel's off the ground. If you have a center cover, go ahead and remove that. I'm using a small pry bar for this. I'm just finding the slot in the center cover. We'll pry this out of place. Once you have that removed, it exposes our 6 21mm lug nuts. Let's remove all of these and the wheel. With the wheel out of the way, we have a clear view of our rear brakes. Let's go ahead and start removing our caliper from the area. To start removing the caliper, I'm going to use a pry bar directly inside of this port. We're attempting to make a little bit of space in here so we can move the caliper around. After pushing back that caliper piston far enough, we can continue on to our 2 10mm headed mounting bolts along the backside. Get this next one. Now we're going to roll the caliper out of place. We're going to start along the top and pull it down and away. A quick inspection of the braking material as we continue on. Once you have the caliper removed, you can inspect those brake pads. On this application, these pads and rotors should be replaced. I'm going to set this aside for now. Let's get this rotor off of here. Thorough inspection of that, we'll set it aside. Now that we have the brake rotor off, that exposes our emergency brake shoes. To start removing the parking brake or emergency brake shoes, we're going to start down along the bottom. You're going to find that you have a small spring and your adjuster. It's important to pay attention to the orientation of the adjuster itself prior to removing it. We can see that we have the adjuster cog facing towards where the front of the vehicle would be. Now to remove this spring, I'm just going to use some cutters. You don't necessarily need to cut the spring, but the cutters do actually hold it better than using pliers. So I'm just going to go ahead and grip onto a portion of the spring that I can reach. We'll gently tug it out of place. An inspection of that spring. Now we can remove that adjuster. Just go ahead and tug on the shoes as necessary, separating them. Set that aside. Now, whenever I replace my parking brake shoes, I always replace the hardware. If you're not, you need to clean and lubricate your adjuster. Now we're making our way up towards our anchor pin. If you look in the center area here, you can see the very tip of the pin. That pin makes its way from the backside all the way through this bracket, through the parking brake shoe, and ends up here at this spring-loaded clamp. So for this, I'm going to press on the spring-loaded clip. We can press on the pin from the other side of the backing plate, and we should be able to slide that pin up towards this gap, or the slot, in that locking clip. Just have to work it a little bit here. Now you can remove the pin from the backside. I typically wait until I have my shoes fully removed. So I'm going to take my parking brake shoe and I'll start swinging this up. We're going to remove the upper spring. You can see it pivoting here. Start sliding that away. Slide the spring out and through that groove on the shoe. There's one of our parking brake shoes. We can remove our spring from the other parking brake shoe as well. Now have a look at the orientation of this spring. You can see where we have our 2 ears that go into the actual parking brake shoes. Look at this center rod making its way all the way across. It's not necessarily across the entire center of the spring, it's kind of a little bit more upward. That's important to note for during the installation process. Now it's time for the other parking brake shoe mounting hardware here. We're holding the pin from the back side of the backing plate. Pressing in on that clip, we'll just go ahead and work the pin towards that opening in the clip itself. Now it's time to start removing our other parking brake shoe. I'm holding the pin from the back side of the backing plate. I'm using my pry bar to gently press in on this, and we should be able to slide the pin towards that opening in the clip there. Go ahead and remove that. Now we can remove that parking brake shoe. There it is, friend. Now we can start removing those pins. It's the same process for either. Just push it out towards the back side and remove it. This cable is supposed to be attached to this lever you can see back here, which is actually part of your parking brake actuator. Now let's move along the back side of the backing plate. This is where we can see the inboard section of our actuator. It's attached to our emergency brake cable. We're going to go ahead and separate this. Slide that off. A quick inspection of our cable, of course. We need to make sure that's in good condition, and we can remove this. Now that we have the actuator out of there, the next thing we need to do is disassemble it and clean it. It needs to move. This one doesn't. Now we're going to have to free up our emergency brake actuator. This is easiest to do in a vise. It's going to hold it still for us. Now, of course, it should pivot, so we're going to break it free. A couple taps. There we are. Now we've got some movement from that, and we can clean this up. Now I'll use a wire brush on both sides of this. You can also use fine sandpaper. Obviously, we want to make sure we clean out that port. I do have sandpaper for that. Now I've got that cleaned up as well as possible. Obviously, you can do as good of a job as needed. Continuing on, I just want to make sure that it does actually fit into the pivot point as it should and move freely. This is extremely important. Obviously, we're not going to leave it like this. We have to add some sort of lubricant. When we do this, you want to make sure it's something that resists water so we don't get rust in this area. For this, I'm just using some grease. A thin amount should do. Make sure it's well lubricated. Let's get right inside that port too. Perfect. All right, so I've got that actuator freed up and lubricated. This is going to function perfectly for miles to come. Let's go ahead and reinstall it. Now, as for this actuator, we'll make sure you have it in the proper orientation. Looking at the lever portion, we have the hook portion facing towards the rear of the vehicle because the emergency brake cable comes from the front. Let's come from the outboard side, and I'm going to slide it in and through, out through its protective boot. Now, once we've done that, we're going to continue on with our emergency brake cable. This is going to sit right on that hook portion at the very end of this lever. Double check to make sure that's properly seated in place. Now we'll make our way back out towards where the parking brake shoes will be located. Prior to installing those shoes, we want to make sure we clean the mounting surface. As we make our way around the backing plate, you're going to find that you have several raised areas. Those are the most important points to make sure that are clean. These areas will have to be lubricated once everything's clean prior to installing the shoes. After cleaning this area, I mentioned that there's several areas to add lubricant to. It's the raised areas, the points where the parking brake shoes will be making contact. We'll also go right along these two areas here. It's just going to help with noise. Now, as I mentioned, I'm replacing my hardware, and that comes with an adjuster. For you, if you are reusing it, you definitely want to take everything apart, clean it, and lubricate it. Just set that aside. Now let's have a look at our actuator here. We're going to lubricate the entire threaded portion all along this area. I like to use a lubricant that repels moisture. Now we're going to install our adjuster cog. We'll bring this all the way up towards the end here so that the shoes would be completely de-adjusted. Just a little bit more lubricant here. We can reinstall the other side. Now it's time to install our brand new parking brake shoes. We'll make sure we have them in the proper orientation. Starting with one of the shoes, we're going to have our upper spring. Go ahead and take that. We're going to bring it all the way up and over this area towards the other side, and we'll continue on with our next parking brake shoe on the far side there. Now each of these shoes are going to have to spread over this upper point here, and we'll swing them down into position. Now let's go ahead and start installing our anchor pins. The one towards the rear is going to be the hardest one to gain access to along the backside there, so that's where I'm going to start. This is just going to go straight through the backing plate. You can see it sliding through that port. I'm going to align it with the proper port on my parking brake shoe, and I'm holding it in position with my index finger on the back side there. Now on the forward side, or the outboard side, it's time to continue on with our locking clip. For this clip, we're going to try to slide it over our pin. We'll have to press it in, and then twist the pin as necessary to get it to lock in. We can see the angle of the pin. Let's make sure we have that aligned with the slot on the clip. I'm going to press this in. I'm using a prying device. Obviously, this is going to be under spring pressure. We're being extremely careful throughout this entire process. We'll adjust as necessary to get this in place. Now we can see that this pin does need to be adjusted. I'm going to make that adjustment now. The pin itself needs to be perpendicular to the slot in that locking clip. Now we're on the other side. Got our pin. Just going to put that through the backing plate there. Now we've got our locking clip. Slide that on there. You know what to do. Go ahead and press that in, turn that pin so it's perpendicular. Along the bottom of this area, we have our lower spring, and we also have to install our adjuster. I have the adjuster in the completely closed position. We're going to start with the spring from the bottom mirror here all the way over towards the rear over there. Same position. Start it in there. You can adjust the shoes as necessary to get this in place. Time for the adjuster. The shoes need to fit inside of each of these two slots. So for that, I'm just going to line up one side. We'll spread the shoes as necessary to get the other one aligned. Now I'm just going to go ahead and make sure this is secured inside of its mounting points. We don't want this at an angle where it could potentially fall out and get caught inside of the brakes. This looks good. Now we're going to clean the hub mating surface of the axle so we can install our rotor using a wire brush. This looks pretty good. After cleaning the area, apply some copper anti-seize to the mounting surface. The next thing we have to do is pay attention to the back side of the rotor. We want to clean the mating surface and each one of our braking surfaces. Let's get this in place. It's time to make our adjustment for the emergency brake shoes. To do that, we're along the back side of the backing plate, just down along the bottom here. We're going to remove our protective plug. For that, I'm just using an angled pick. You can use pretty much anything as a prying device. Now inside this area is where we're going to have to make our adjustment. I'm using an angled pry bar. We're going all the way into this area and we're feeling for our adjustment point. Once you get onto that, you're going to want to press up against it and turn one direction or the other to make your adjustments. As you're doing this, you also need to be attempting to turn the rotor. The rotor needs to be able to spin. If you get to the point that you're adjusting and it gets so you can't turn it, you've over-adjusted and you need to back it off a little bit. We want to have just a slight bit of drag here, not very much because that will cause heat. Get our caliper on. Just tap it onto place. Should seat perfectly. Continue on with your mounting bolts. Let's install both of our caliper slider mounting bolts. For these, once you have them started in, snug them up and torque them to 20 foot-pounds. And double check to make sure your flex hose isn't twisted or kinked in any way. One more quick inspection in this area, we'll reinstall our wheel. Once you have your wheel in place, start on all 6 of your 21mm lug nuts and we'll bottom them out. Now with the wheel safely on the ground, let's torque each one of our 21mm lug nuts to 150 foot-pounds in a crisscross manner. Torqued. If you have a center cover, install that now. Now when installing the center cover, the one thing that we want to pay attention to is the slot where we had pried from. If you were looking at the wheel, you're going to find that it has a notch. That notch would be located closest to your valve stem. Let's align all 3 of these areas and we'll tap this into place.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.